do your thing here, bud. Nobody's any better at this than you are.
Have fun, take a deep breath.
Give them hell at the end. Good luck to you.
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here. Brett, be affirmative. You told me to get on.
Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Heckert. Hell yeah.
11 got it. Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position, we'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4, great job, guys.
Good morning and welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark and we are headed to Sonoma today. Hopefully if you had a chance to watch the truck race yesterday, quite entertaining, and Kyle Busch pretty much dominated that race. But it was quite interesting. Ross Chastain was up there. Alex Bowman tried to make his way to the front. Some of the other Cup guys did not fare so well. Harrison Burton got some good experience, and Austin Dillon also did okay. Surprisingly, Carson Holsevar raced about 10 laps and made his way halfway through the field from the back before he gave over his car to Daniel Suarez, who got to finish out the race for him and ended up having a really good day, finishing in 4th. So good for Daniel. He may be one of the guys that we need to kind of watch out for today. Maybe that's a potential sneaky pick on how sneaky he is now that he finished so well yesterday. But either way, hey, if you're just joining, make sure you hit me up in the chat. Let me know maybe your picks, if you've got questions about your picks. Who do you think's going to win? Who are you going to avoid? Who do you think has just a miserable day? Does the Joe Gibbs pit crews just decide to give them crappy pit service again, or do they just do that on their own? It's going to be interesting. Pit road is quite entertaining there. It's laid out a little different, but either way, let's take a look. Get this to work. All right. So like I said, we are at Sonoma Raceway for the Toyota Save Mart 350. This is, of course, a road course. It is the old configuration where they have changed it and gotten rid of a few corners, but the track length is still 1.99 miles. Well, it's now 1.99 miles, 12 turns. The race length is 110 laps. Dominator points will consist of 77 points, which, I mean, it does give a few extra points, and it will be something we may need to look at, but it's not going to be the end-all, mostly because laps led don't give you as much as fast laps, and we'll see fast laps happen in the middle of the pack and towards the rear of the pack, depending on tires, because tire fall-off here does seem to be fairly significant. It seems about 10 laps in to 15 laps in, the pace slows down at least 2 to maybe 3 seconds. So, you get somebody that gets fresh tires because of whatever reason, they're going to come out and have a little bit of clean air, and they'll have fast laps where the leader won't have those fast laps. So, Dominator points will matter, but not to a major advantage like we would see at some of the short tracks, Martinsville, Bristol, those types of things, where it's 500 laps, and laps led definitely add up at that point. But either way, when I've looked at the comparisons that I use to kind of get some data, I'm using, of course, Sonoma, Watkins Glen, Circuits of the America, and Road Americas. I don't typically use, when they're at a true road course, I don't typically use the Roval like they used at Charlotte, Indy, or Daytona, when they use part of the racetrack and part of the infield road course. But with that being said, we'll start off here with Kyle Larson at 10,600. So a few things that I've added from yesterday's or Friday's video is up here in the top left. Still has their power ranking. This has the amount of percentage that I'm using in my lineups. So I'm looking at about 30 to 35% usage for Kyle Larson. I think he will probably be owned about that percentage also. His practice speed, so he was first in practice speeds, and he does have the pole. So he was fastest in qualifying. So he was first in practice and first in qualifying. Very quick, picking up right where he left off last year, where he won this race. So these data points down here equate to, these are the 5 tracks that I used to come up with these numbers. I didn't go past 2018, but I did want to include 2018 because it was when they raced on this old historic course or layout. But I wanted to make sure I included Circuits of the America, because that has the next gen car usage, and his average finish, where he finished in the race last year here at Sonoma. His total starts on road courses and his total wins, and I think this number is actually not correct. I think that's 3 wins. I didn't know he had 3 wins last year on road courses. But either way, not really going to go over the bottom line data points as much as I will practice speeds and starting speeds, and kind of go through my thoughts on where they land. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Hit me up in the chat and let me know your picks, who you're avoiding, and who you're taking for fantasy, or just let me know that you're out there. Thanks for coming in. Chase Elliott, 10,400. Now ranked at number 2. I'm going to have him about the same amount of ownership as Kyle Larson. I think Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson might be hands down the 2 guys to absolutely try to beat today. They both showed very, very similar speed. They both are really good at road courses. They both dominated this race last year at Sonoma. I think hands down they're going to be the 2 to catch today. Now, we'll have some surprises, but hands down right now, with all the data points looking, and Chase Elliott's practice speeds were right behind Kyle Larson's, and his starting spot right next to Kyle Larson. So it's going to be, I think Kyle Larson gets the jump at the start. Now the question is, will Chase Elliott be able to catch up and pass Kyle Larson, or will Kyle Larson just lead the entire first stage? Good possibility. He was very quick. Now, he was also really loose in his qualifying effort, if you happen to catch that. But Chase Elliott, second in practice and starting second. Kyle Busch, 10,100. 4th on the ranking system. I'm going to have Kyle Busch at about 25 to 30% ownership. He did win the truck race yesterday and had a really good truck. We had a couple guys come up and contend with him there towards the end. But he was still able to get the job done and secure his streak of truck victories. Over the last, I think, 10 or 11 years, he's had a win, at least one win in that series. But Kyle Busch's practice speeds, he was 4th on 1 lap, and he and 9 other drivers did compete 10 consecutive laps, and Kyle Busch was first in that 10 consecutive lap. But his qualifying wasn't quite as good as he had hoped, and did not make the final 10, and will be starting 12th. So we got a little PD upside potential with Kyle Busch. I think he could easily make himself up into the top 5. Now the question is whether Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott have an issue, or Kyle Busch or any of these guys can actually catch up to those 2 front Hendrick Motorsports Chevy drivers. Martin Truex Jr. Ooh, $10,000. He is first on the ranking system, mostly because he is starting in 28th. Ton of PD upside. He finished 3rd in this race last year, but he was not happy in his interviews. He was not happy with how the car was performing. The question is, can they make changes to that car to get him potentially into a top 10 spot? I think so. He is a very good road course racer. I mean, he's got 4 wins total to his career. He has 2 out of the last 5 that we're looking at. He's won here at Sonoma before. I would not count Martin Truex Jr. out. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get up there. Don't think he has a whole lot of dominator points, but I think he does have potential for a lot of PD upside, place differential, and a decent finishing position. So, I mean, if he can start 28th, get his way up to 8th or 9th, that's going to be a huge win for Truex for the day and probably put him in the optimal lineup. So, definitely don't want to completely avoid Martin Truex Jr., but we've also seen when these guys are practicing slow, they can work on their car and get a little bit better, but a lot of times they just get marred in traffic and just don't go as high up as we think they're going to. So a little caution with Martin Truex Jr. because he just wasn't showing the speed that I was hoping he would have. But that's been kind of the case with Martin a lot this year, so it makes me kind of wonder what's going on. Now, he always ends up having a somewhat decent finish, at least recently, but I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous on Martin Truex Jr. I think he's going to be heavily owned. I think a lot of people are going to jump on him because of his starting position and how well he does race road courses. But the history with this new car and what he's been showing in practices at other tracks, and then just it being true when it comes to the actual race trim, I think I might fade off of Martin a little bit, but I expect him probably to be maybe 35 or 40% owned. So I guess I'm fading off of Martin. Ross Chastain, 9,800. He was really quick in the Truck Series yesterday and was up there battling with Kyle Busch most of the day. Ended up, I think, 3rd or 4th or 5th. I can't remember where he finished yesterday's truck race, but he had a good day overall. 9,800. His practice speed was 3rd. He's starting 7th on the field today. I think, and he won at COTA earlier this year. The only issue with Ross, at least from here probably to the end of the year, is the outlier of when does Denny Hamlin retaliate? When does Chase Elliott retaliate? When does half the field retaliate for Ross being overly aggressive and kind of doing some dumb things at times? So that will have me worried from here on out. Now, I'm probably not fading off of Ross. I'm still probably going to have him 30-35% because he's also aggressive. He has no problem sticking his bumper to Chase Elliott to move him out of the way to go get the win. I mean, he did it with AJ to get the win at COTA. Yeah, I mean, when does AJ pay Ross back? I mean, AJ's in this race today. So Ross doesn't have a whole lot of friends at this point, except for maybe Daniel Suarez, who is his teammate. So that is something to be concerned about with Ross, at least from here until probably the end of the year, or when we think that everybody has finally retaliated and gotten him back. The problem is Ross is aggressive enough that he'll be like, well, now I owe you 1-2. Maybe not. But his practice speed was 3rd. He's starting 7th. He was quick yesterday. Won a COTA earlier this year in this car. I'll have him in 30-35% in my lineups. Hey, hit me up in the chat if you're out there watching. If you have any questions, thoughts, who you think's going to win? Who do you think's not going to win? Who are you fading? Who are you heavy on? Denny Hamlin, 9,600. 12th on the ranking system. Denny's practice speeds early, I don't know. Denny Hamlin was just, he had enough, but his tire fall off was more significant than anybody else's. Well, not anybody else's, but of these front runners. He did do a 10-lap run. I think he actually did a 12-lap run, but he was 6th in 10-lap consecutive speed, 25th on single-lap speed. Starting 10th, I think he might be a top 10 today, but Denny just doesn't. Most of the Toyota guys don't seem to have a great car this weekend. And that typically, when they have trouble in practice and qualifying as a group, they typically don't race well as a group either. So I think Chevy has got the car to beat today. I think Toyota may be a little bit better than Ford, but they're both off from where the Chevy speed is, at least for what I'm seeing in practice. And that typically has started to ring true. Family Man, good morning, Mark. Good luck today. It's hard to pick between Larson and Elliott. Do you think playing both of them is acceptable? Absolutely. I have both of them. So I run about 40 lineups, 20 lap or 20 contestant lineups, and I probably have them in 25% of my 40 lineups together. And then I pretty much scattered them with ownership with some of the other guys that we'll talk about, AJ, Ross, Tyler Reddick, those types of guys, and then kind of go through and smatter in the Suarez's, and then Christopher Bell starting kind of towards the back, but we'll get to those guys here in just a second. But yeah, I think potentially, I mean, you're only going to need one dominator, but I easily think that Larson and Elliott will probably, if nothing weird happens, will finish 1-2 in this race. It could very easily be a very Formula One style type of race where those two guys just check out from the field and becomes kind of boring other than what happens in the back. But this next gen car has thrown us for loops all year long, so I don't expect anything different. Ryan Blaney, 9,400. His practice speed was pretty good at 8. He did do a 10-lap consecutive where he was 4th. He is starting 14th. I'm fading Ryan Blaney. Nothing really tells me to fade Ryan Blaney other than I just don't think he's going to be, I don't think the Fords are going to be cars that are going to end up running up front. I think Michael McDowell might be the best running Ford today. As strange as that sounds, but Michael McDowell is a good road course racer, and the previous generation car was not good for him. This car is built much more for road courses than any car that they've had in the past. So, but either way, we'll talk about Michael when we get there. But Ryan Blaney, 9,400. His practice speeds were decent. He's starting 14th, so there is a potential little PD upside. Do I think he gets much more than a top 10? I'm not sure he sniffs a top 5. And without doing that, I don't think the finishing position and the place differential is high enough at that price tag for me to take him. And that's probably why I'm fading him. And now he is probably only going to be in the teens on ownership. So I don't think I'm fading off too much. Just because he could be quietly one of the guys to take today, but I don't see it. William Byron, 9,200. Practice speed was 13th. He's starting 20th, so we've got some PD upside potential here. But, when we look down at his record at road courses, in the last 5, he's only got one top 5. His average finish is 20.2. He's never had a top 5 on any road course. So, I mean, because of his starting spot, he's got PD upside. I think he might sniff a top 10. So I'm going to have 20-25% ownership just because I think the Chevys are going to be faster today. But other than that, I don't love a William Byron pick. It's kind of like Alex Bowman when we get to him. I think we're kind of in the same boat. Joey Logano, $9,000. His practice speed was 18th. Starting 9th. This is a worse position than Ryan Blaney's in. At least we've got 5 potential PD upside plays. Joey Logano might get himself into a top 5 situation, but I don't think he hunts for a top 3. I don't think he's comparable to a Ross, Chase Elliott, or Larson. So I don't think there's enough room for Joey to become somebody that viably makes the optimal lineup. I mean, he could be a plug and play, not a plug and play, but but potential. I don't think you hit a big pot. I think if you're in a 50-50 cash situation, I think Joey's not a bad pick. But I typically just play tournaments, so I'm definitely faded off of Joey. I think his ownership probably comes in the teens. Might sniff 20, but starting ninth, there's just no real upside for a $9,000 guy. Not when you've got. When I was putting my lineups together last night, it was tough not to take some of the back markers. And what you're doing then is just trying to find a back marker who has enough PD upside, and it is going to end up running clean and running fast enough to get up into the, sniff a top 10 or be in the teens at the finish. Somebody like we'll get to them in a second. But Christopher Bell, 8,900. His practice speed was awful. His qualifying was awful. Until they figured out, hey, we've got a problem with our steering. Well, because we had to replace our steering stuff, unapproved adjustment, they've got to go to the back of the pack. Luckily enough, he didn't qualify well. So he's starting 31st. He will have to start from the rear, which is all of 5 different spots. Not worried about that, because the guys that are further back, he'll easily get around and get by. Even with his slow speed, he would get around those guys within the first few laps. So Christopher Bell, I think, has one of the best PD upside plays. For 8,900, I'll take Christopher Bell over that Joey Logano, William Byron, or Ryan Blaney any day. In fact, I would take Christopher Bell over Denny Hamlin. Do I think Christopher Bell sniffs a win? No. Do I think he gets a top 5? No. He might sniff a top 10, but coming from 31st to 10th, that puts you in the optimal lineup potential. So Christopher Bell will definitely be Bell will be extremely chalky today, starting 31st. But there's going to be some other guys that are going to be chalky too. And trying to fit all of these guys in is going to be tough. I mean, Bell's at 8,900. That's tough to put him in. If you're trying to pull a Chase Elliott and a Kyle Larson and a Christopher Bell, you spent a ton of money at this point, and now you're really having to dig deep and find some value. So that's going to be the tough part about Christopher Bell, is I think if you can fit a Christopher Bell in with Elliott and Larson and fit in some decent other guys in the back, that's going to be a good lineup if all the numbers play. And of course, they never end up playing the way we think they do. AJ Allmendinger, I mean, as we talked about on Friday, AJ has never run well here. Now, I did hear an interesting interview with one of the main big reporters, was doing an interview on SiriusXM, and he was talking about how AJ's never been able to perform well here because, at least in recent, when he was considered kind of a road course ringer, he wasn't full-time, he would come, his speed would be super fast, he'd pass half the field, and he'd come into his pit crew, and his pit crew was third tier. It was a bunch of it was like 4 guys doing their pit stops, where everybody else is bringing their regulars. He's having to have piecemeal pit stops. So he would come in after making up a bunch of spots on the track and have the worst pit stop and end up coming out behind everybody. So he'd have to do it again. So he just never got good finishes. Well, he's got a full-time pit crew now. Kaulig Racing has given the money to this team to have great pit crews. Does that make a difference for AJ this week? I mean, to me, it sounds like a very plausible reason why AJ has never performed super well here. And by the way, I've got pretty big thunderstorms going on around me, so if I happen to drop off, I'll come back after I get power back or the internet comes back or whatever. But yeah, my house just kind of shook. I'm not sure if you heard in the background or not, but pretty good thunderstorms here in Virginia right now. No chance of that today in Sonoma. Maybe a little windy, but going to be bright skies and hot. But I'm going to have 35% ownership on AJ. I know that none of the stats point to that other than his record at other road courses. And I'm just I'm hoping that because of the pit crew issues, AJ's able to get himself into the top 5 spot or potentially even vying for the win. So I do like AJ. The stats don't show that he does well here, but I'll take that. Chase Briscoe, 8,700, practice 15th, starting 15th. My guess is he probably finishes 15th. He is a good road course racer, but or at least he was a good road course racer in the Xfinity Series. And he's been okay in Cup. I mean, he's got 3 top 10s and 4 top 20s in his 8 total starts on road courses. But at similar tracks like this, he's been okay. A 17.3 average finish, practice 15th, starting 15th. My guess is you kind of start where you finish here. I think he might sniff a top 10, but not being in the Ford. I just don't think the Ford and Toyotas have anything for the Chevys today. Plain and simple. I think it's going to be a Chevy showdown. That's just my honest opinion. But I'll have 10 to 15% ownership on Briscoe. Tyler Reddick, 8,500. His practice speed, 1 lap speed was 17th. He was 8 of 9 on 10 lap average. He is starting 5th. He qualified well. One of these times, this Tyler Reddick pick is going to pay off for me. I don't think his ownership is. I think I'm probably too heavy on Tyler Reddick, to be perfectly honest, and I may end up coming off of that a little bit. But his road course, out of 3 starts, he has 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, and 2 top 20s. A 10.3 average finish. I don't know, starting 5th kind of bothers me a little bit because there's not a whole lot of room for PD upside. There is a lot of downside potential for Tyler. I think he's easily a top 10, and if everything goes right, he could hunt a podium finish or get himself potentially that first win. Just don't know if today is the day for Tyler to do that. And he just is so, between him and Suarez, I'm not sure which ones are snake bit more often or had worse luck. On-track luck. Where I think like a Bubba Wallace and Denny Hamlin, it's not necessarily on-track issues, it's pit crew issues and pit stop issues that are biting them. So, what's going to be the most dramatic thing that happens today? Thanks, Chess. Great question. The most dramatic thing that happens today would be Michael McDowell finishing first and winning and dominating this race. It has potential. I mean, like I've said, Michael McDowell actually is a really good road course racer. We'll get to him in a second. But Michael McDowell would be my dark horse pick. That would be pretty dramatic. I mean, the other one is Chase Elliott hit Ross Chastain and then Denny Hamlin T-bones him and takes him out completely. I don't know. That could be pretty dramatic. I don't think they do that here. I think the paybacks for Ross are gonna come in the playoffs. But Austin Cindric next in line here, 8,400. Practice speed was fair at 24th, starting 25th. Austin Cindric actually is a really good road course racer, at least was in the Xfinity Series, more so than Chase Briscoe. Not quite as good as an AJ, but he, when we look at the 5 races, he does have a top 5. He finished the top 10. I mean, he finished 6th at COTA earlier this year. I like Austin Cindric. Starting 25th, I think there's a ton of PD upside play here. He's a great road course racer. I think he can sniff a top 10. If everything falls right, he can get himself to a top 5, but a lot of things would have to fall right, and that probably means Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson take each other out. That would be pretty dramatic, too, if the two of them took each other out. Those types of things would have to happen for Austin to get to a top 5, but I think Austin's easily good enough to get himself into a top 10. This race is not so long of a race that it's going to bother Austin all that much. I'm not ever saying that Austin gets bothered by these super long races. It's just that he's adjusting to them. Where this race is a little bit on the shorter side, it should be about probably 2 hours and 45 minutes, as long as they don't have to red flag it for walls getting knocked down like they did yesterday in the truck race. But I think length of the race doesn't bother Austin today. So I've got him in 20-25%. He could end up being fairly chalky too, right there with Christopher Bell. And we're starting to get to a price point that makes a little more sense if you're trying to fit two of the top contenders into your lineups. All right, Kurt Busch, 8,200. His practice speed was 6, and he was second in 10-lap averages. He's starting 11th. I think Kurt kind of finishes where he starts here. I'm not sure he gets up and hunts for a top 5 or top 10. I think he is a 11th, 12th, or 13th place car today. I think he's decent at road courses. He's not great. I mean, out of 49 total starts, he has 15 top 5s, but none recently. I mean, recently he's only got 2 top 10s out of the 5 tracks we're looking at. So I think Kurt Busch is somebody to kind of keep an eye on, but I think he might be safe for a cash lineup because I don't think he's going to hurt you a whole lot. That's just, I'll have him 10 to 15% of my lineups, and I think that's kind of where he probably comes. Kevin Harvick, 8,100, starting 23rd. His 1-lap practice speed was 11th. Starting 23rd, there's a PD upside potential with Kevin because of his starting spot, but his practice speeds were okay. I think Kevin gets himself into a 15th to 10th place finish. Is that enough to get the optimal lineup at 8,100? Maybe. Kevin may be a decent play for cash lineup. I don't know. I've got him in 10 to 15%. I think that's probably where he ends up falling. I think he probably ends up falling right in line with that. I mean, the only real upside is a little bit of PD upside play for Kevin, but I don't think it's enough to warrant, at least for tournaments. It could be safe for cash, but yeah. A lot of things would have to happen for me to think Kevin Harvick would end up with a top 5 or podium finish. Alex Bowman, 7,900. Practice speed was 23rd, starting 19th. Not great for somebody who runs actually fairly well at road courses. And he ran fairly well yesterday until they had issues with, I think, 5 laps to go, 6 laps to go. Ended up in the small big one there. I mean, took out 4 cars, 5 cars. So Alex Bowman's, I mean, he was hunting for the Coda victory, and I think with this car, I think he ends up at least in a top 10, if not top 5 situation. Driving a Chevy with Hendrick. Maybe they just missed on the setup a little bit, but I like Alex Bowman. I think he's got a lot of PD upside potential. I've got him in 25 to 30% of my lineups, 13th on the rankings. So, we're starting to get into some guys that, the pricing is where we need at least one of these guys along with 2 of the top tier guys. And then we've got to find some value down here in a little bit. Daniel Sora is 7,700. Practice speed was 5th, starting 8th. He ended up finishing 4th in Hocevar's car yesterday after being 2 laps down. Daniel's a really good road course racer. He's had some bad luck on road courses, but if he can keep his nose clean, I think he'll hunt a top 5. He could even get himself that cup win today. I actually like Daniel probably more than I like Tyler Reddick for the win, especially long shot win. 15 to 20% ownership I'll have on Daniel. I think that may actually be a little bit heavy. I think he might be in the lower teens, but I mean, Daniel Suarez could be a sneaky pick at 7,700. So just got to keep that in mind. Daniel has the potential. Eric Jones, here's a guy that if we're looking for PD upside play, that's going to be probably heavily owned along there with Christopher Bell, $7,500. Practice 12th, and I still haven't figured out exactly what he did in qualifying. Nothing but pitch strategy calls, I think. Hard to pass on a road course. It is hard to pass without using that nose. Now, turn 11 really has a great opportunity, just as turn 7 does here at Sonoma. Those 2 corners are great passing zones. And I guess also coming down to, what do they call it, 4A? Yeah, it's really strange how they numbered this course. Literally, they go from 4A to turn 7. they skipped 5 and 6 completely. But that's with the old chicane shoot thing that they had last year. But yeah, I think pit strategy's always been one of the big things at road courses, and that won't change today. Other than your dominator will be your dominator. Your guy that ends up turning up fastest, as long as he doesn't have a mechanical issue, he's going to be, and that'll probably end up being a Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott today. Eric Jones 7,500, practice 12th, started 33rd. I still don't know exactly what happened in his qualifying because that's not indicative to what his practice speeds were. But I'll take a 33rd starting spot with a top 10 driver, potentially sniff a top 10. I'll have him in 35% ownership. He's probably going to be fairly heavily owned. I think he's probably going to, I'm probably a little bit heavier than the field. He could be probably 25 to 30% owned. And it could be more because of his price tag compared to Christopher Bell. It's a little easier to fit in an Eric Jones. And I think you're getting the plus side of having a Chevy compared to a Toyota. And as far as I know, Eric Jones didn't have any mechanical issues. It always kind of makes me a little nervous when they have mechanical issues and have to start from the rear. Did they actually get it all the way fixed? Now, it was just a steering rack system that was causing the problem. And as we saw in Christopher Bell, he wasn't awful in practice. He wasn't great either. And I think the culprit was that steering issue he was having. So, it wasn't like they had to replace the engine or the transmission or anything like that. So, but Eric Jones, I think, just slipped up on his qualifying, which gives us great opportunity for PD upside play. Eric Almirola, 7,300. Practice speed was 31st. Starting 21st. And he's not awful at road courses, and he's not good at a road course either. And he's driving a Ford. No offense to Fords or Toyotas. I'm just trying to be honest. I think the Chevys are going to be absolutely the car to beat today. 21st on the ranking. I've got him in 5 to 10% of my lineups, and I think that's probably where he ends up falling. Eric Almirola, if it's a mile or less track, Eric's the guy to take. I mean, we saw that last week at Gateway. Now it was a 1.25, but it drove like a short track. I just don't like the Almirola pick. Starting 21st, I think that may be where he finishes, to be perfectly honest. So, not going to have a whole lot of ownership. Starting 21st and finishing 21st doesn't really do a whole lot for me. Michael McDowell. I so badly wanted to be able to take Michael McDowell, but, dude, you just outkicked your coverage. Your practice speed was 22nd, and then you go and turn in a 4th for qualifying. Awesome for you. And you were really fast. But I'm not sure you're that fast. I think, if anything, go put a few dollars on Michael McDowell to either finish top 3 or first, and see if it pays. I mean, I think he's 50 to 1 right now to win the race. But yeah, I just wish he hadn't qualified so well, because I think Michael McDowell is a sneaky pick. I don't think he's a sneaky pick for DraftKings, because the potential of him getting anything better than a top 4 is going to be tough. Something's going to have to happen. But I mean, I think he ends up finishing maybe top 10 again. But starting 4th, it's just I can't swallow that pill. It's too tough. So 0% ownership on Michael, only because of where he's starting, not because I don't think he can race and I don't think he can't finish well. I may end up putting a few dollars on him to either win or take a top 3. Oh yeah, McDowell and Buescher are both super underrated. Yeah, and I think Buescher with the extra week of rest, maybe it's something to look at. We'll get to him in a second, though. Cole Custer, $7,000. Practice speed was 29th, and dude, you way outkicked your coverage starting 6. Dude, you are not a road course guy, and no time over the next 24 hours will you figure out how to road course race. You figured out how to turn a fast lap. Give you that. But starting 6, I'll take Michael McDowell starting 4th over a Cole Custer starting 6th. But I'm not taking either one of them. So, not touching that. Even if Cole Custer had qualified 20th, I wouldn't touch it. He's too inconsistent. Austin Dillon, 6,900. Practice 26, 7th on 10 lap average. Starting 13th. I think you kind of finished where you start here, Austin. So, I have no interest in it. He's never had a top 10 finish on a road course. He has 11 top 20s out of 23, so not even half the time does he finish in the top 20. He's gotten better, but he's starting 13th. Once again, it's kind of like these other two guys, like McDowell and Custer. Yeah, outkicked your coverage, in my opinion. I'm not sure I would have taken Austin Dillon if he was starting 20th. He would have to start like 30th for me to go, maybe. But yeah, Austin Dillon, no, sorry, not interested. Not biting on that one. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 6,800. Practice speed was 30th, starting 32nd. What have you done for me lately, Ricky? Well, last week you didn't do very good, and you ended up wrecking Bubba, and then Denny ended up trying to wreck you. So, Ricky Stenhouse, not making friends. Maybe he and Ross Chastain can go to dinner together, because it might be the only two that might like each other at this point. 6,800. I mean, the only upside to Ricky is if there's a little bit of carnage out there and he stays out of it, he can work his way up to a top 20. But, I mean, just like Austin Dillon, I mean, 26 total starts with only 14 top 20s. He's never gotten a top 10 on a road course. I'm going to have him in 10 to 15% lineups, but mostly because we're starting to get to a price range where that's affordable, and he's a little bit, because he's starting 32nd, he's a better pick than Austin Dillon, Cole Custer, or Michael McDowell. Plain and simple. At 6,800, if you're looking at those four guys, I'll take Ricky starting 32nd with the same kind of stats. Now, I wish Michael McDowell was starting 32nd. That would be a no-brainer. But he would also end up being 35-40% owned. Brad K, 6,600. Practice speed was 9th. He was 3rd in 10 lap averages, starting 22nd. Brad just fights himself so much this year. He's starting to get it together. He's starting to get this team gelled. Like Family Man just said, Chris Buescher's underrated, and Chris Buescher's starting to run really well. I think Roush is going to get it figured out. I don't know if we're going to see it before the playoffs to where one of the two of them can get themselves a win. But Brad starting 22nd, with the practice speeds, not bad. He does pretty well at road courses. Out of 32, he's got 7 top 5s. Starting 22nd, there's some PD upside. I think he could sniff a top 10. I think he's probably a low-teen type driver. Now, is that enough to get it into a cash play or tournament play? Possibly. But I think I like the Ricky Stenhouse play for $200 more. But I think Brad's going to be faster. I've got 15 to 20% ownership on Brad. I think it's just all kind of how lineups end up falling on whether you take Ricky or Brad. Bubba Wallace, 6,400. Before COTA earlier, 5-6 weeks ago, I was like, Bubba Wallace sucks at road courses. And he does suck at road courses. Until recently. He showed a lot of speed at COTA and probably would have had himself a top 10 or top 5 finish if they hadn't screwed that wheel up. Yeah, I'm okay with you on BK. Agreed. Yeah, definitely, man. I'll take Brad over the rest of them just for the price tag. I think it just kind of fits in, and he's good. They're going to get that Roush team is going to get turned around. If not, Brad will end up pulling his hair out and probably leaving the sport. But because he'll go broke. But no, Roush has got a ton of money. They'll be fun, and Brad will be fine. Bubba Wallace, 6,400. Like I said, before COTA, I was like, Bubba Wallace sucks at road courses. Don't take him. Don't touch him. But he's actually good. Getting better. I wouldn't say he's good. He's getting better. starting 27th, I think we got some PD upside potential here. His practice speed was good. He might end up being the top finishing Toyota, in my opinion. Between him and Christopher Bell, I think are great upside PD upside plays, especially in the Toyota camp. Something's not right with Truex Jr.'s team and Truex Jr.'s head. I don't know if he's too concerned. I'm trying to figure out if he's going to race again next year or not. I don't know. But I like the Bubba Wallace play starting 27th and at $6,400 over a Christopher Bell or Martin Truex Jr. I'll take the savings and with the same potential upside. Truex Jr. is a much better road course racer, so that's in play. But Bubba had great speed at Coda, so I'm a little heavy on Bubba. I think he probably comes in the high teens on ownership, so I'm probably a little heavy on him. Justin Haley, 6,300, practice 27th, starting 18th. I mean, Justin had a good race at Coda. He got himself a top 20 there. His stats aren't great, but he was in junk equipment last year. And he also didn't have a teammate of AJ Almandinger to lean on. So if he really goes to the AJ Almandinger school of road course racing, Justin Haley's going to end up being a good road course racer. Do I think that's today? And do I think starting 18th that plays well? No. I think if there's carnage, he ends up finishing where he starts and might get into the top 15. But I don't love the Justin Haley play today, mostly because of his starting position. I don't think he's bad, and I think he's got a great teammate. Chris Buescher, 6,100. Practice speed was 10th, starting 3rd. Dude, you outkicked your coverage. Sorry. Plain and simple. He's good at road courses. I mean, he's not good. He's not bad at road courses. I mean, 21 total starts on road courses. He only has one top 5, which equated to one top 10, and only 16. He finishes a lot of times in the top 20. The problem is he's starting 3rd. Can he potentially stay there? It's going to have to be nice. Oh, great. Now we're getting warnings from my device. Yeah, it's ugly outside, or getting uglier. So hopefully I don't lose the stream. Hopefully it's coming across okay. But if I do, I'll come back. And we'll pick up where I left off. Joey Hand. I talked about this earlier. I mean, Joey Hand's a great road course racer. Plain and simple, hands down. But I think it's kind of the AJ Allmendinger effect. You're great on road courses. This car's built to race on road courses. But how good is your pit crew? So Joey Hand can get himself in, race himself all the way up from 17th to a top 10. And on the first pit stop, he goes in, and the pit crew's so slow that he comes out 25th. Well, then he races stage 2 all the way up to 10th. And he comes in for his pit stop. And then he has to go back to 25th again. How many times can you come through the field without tearing your equipment up or getting involved with somebody else? Number one, Joey Hand, you outkick your coverage. Starting 17th, I don't like it. If you're already starting from the back, by the end of the race, yeah, he could be in that 15th, 16th, 17th spot. But starting 17th, I hate to say you outkick your coverage, but you outkick your coverage. He's a great road course racer, but I don't think that he's got the team behind him to put it all together. Next in line here, Ty Dillon, 5,800, starting 34th. Practice 34th. I'm literally just doing the play of you're starting 2 spots from dead last. Just keep your nose clean, and you'll end up finishing 20th. And that would be enough at 5,800 for me to take some. And I do. I've got 15 to 20% ownership on Ty Dillon. The problem is Ty Dillon can be aggressive, a little too aggressive sometimes. But I'll take my chances on Ty Dillon, 5,800, starting 34th. He's got a lot of PD upside and a lot of potential upside play. Hey man, who do you think wins? That's a question I just thought about. Who do you think wins the race outright? Not Draftkings, but who do you think wins outright? And who's your favorite long shot? I think I have an idea. But Harrison Burton, 5,600. Starting 26, his practice speed was 21st on single lap, 5 and 10 lap average, and I'll give it to Harrison Burton. He's putting the laps in. He raced the entire race yesterday in the truck race, had a decent finish. He did a lot of practice. Starting 26, decent PD upside play here. He'll have an okay pit crew. I mean, for the price, I like Harrison Burton, 20-25%. I'll bite on that one a little bit. Don't love the fact of he's driving the Ford today, but I think he gets himself and hunts himself into a top teen, not top 10, top teen. 15, 16, somewhere in there, which may be enough that's enough value with 5,600 starting 26 to potentially make it into a good cash lineup or a decent tournament. Scott Heckert. Once again, same thing with Joey Hand. The difference is Scott Heckert is starting 35th. He's a good road course racer. No offense to BJ McLeod, but doesn't have the pit crew to help support him, which is going to end up hurting him. So I think he's going to get some attrition upside, but I don't think it's enough attrition to warrant anything better than probably 26th, 27th. Something really serious would have to happen for Scott Heckert to have a top 20 day. And that's the only way I have a whole lot of interest. I mean, I'll have been 5 and 10% of my lineups just because it fit. Not necessarily because I was hunting to try to put Scott Heckert in my lineup. But he's super excited to be in this race, and it's kind of cool to see his social media post. He'll have fun with today. Corey Lejoy, yeah, not even remotely interested, even starting 30th. Your practice speeds were awful. Your year has been awful. You're snake bitten as bad as the rest of them. Can't seem to get out of his own way. I think he's super funny. I think he's great for the sport. But yeah, starting 30th, practice speed 30th. You finished 18th here last year, but I mean, out of 14 road course races, you only have 3 top 20s. Not interested.